CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to our special program, Crosstalk. More than 5,000 participants gather in Boao on the beautiful Chinese island of Hainan for the annual Boao Forum. One of the main topics this year is what China can bring to the world with its high-quality development and high-end opening up. What is the scale and potential of the Chinese economy? What opportunities does China share with global investors? And in a world where protectionism is prevalent, how can China cooperate with traditional technological powers for mutual benefit? To discuss these questions and more, I'm glad to talk with guests from different nations through real-time translation. Joining me today are Russian guest Konstantin Schepin, news commentator from CGTN Russian, our French guest Yves Mouillet, news commentator from CGTN Français, and our Chinese guest Yves Mouillet, permanent vice director of the World Development Institute of Development Research Center of the State Council. That's our topic. I'm Xu Qinduo. I will start with Mr. Ding. You know that China is embarking on the, let's say, the new road of high-quality development, of course, with the goal of achieving Chinese modernization. Tell us your understanding of the current status of the Chinese economy and what's the potential.
其实中国经济这个所谓高质量和高开放程度的发展，提出来也。
These so-termed concepts of high-quality development and high-level opening up have been proposed for over 10 years. We often forget that China has been undergoing a transition from high-speed development to high-quality development. The concept of high-quality development was put forward in 2013 amid a backdrop of the slowdown of the speed of growth of the Chinese economy. GDP growth slowed from around 10% to 9% and 8%. It continued to gradually slow down to between 7% and 6%. But one feature of high-quality development is that the growth rate of per capita income far exceeds that of the growth rate of GDP. And the Chinese people can feel it, right? That is to say, income is increasing despite a slowdown in GDP growth. This is a typical feature of high-quality development. Another feature is the improvement of infrastructure. Construction of infrastructure like high-speed railways, airports, and expressways all started from that time. Investment in infrastructure intensified after the 2008 financial crisis. So high-quality development boosted infrastructure investment, and it greatly improved people's livelihood. But we have to acknowledge that the few years of COVID-19 pandemic did greatly affect the Chinese people's quality of life. That's why people were not feeling particularly good. That was despite the fact that China achieved a quick recovery of its economy in 2023. This year, we have witnessed a significant recovery of the economy because the government is making efforts to boost economic growth and introduced a slew of measures that have been issued to favor small and medium enterprises and consumption. We can witness significant growth in the first quarter of 2024, be it consumption, investment, or foreign capital inflow. They are all picking up speed in terms of recovery.
Well, Konstantin, I also want to have your opinion on the Chinese economy. You have been following this, obviously, for years. What are the opportunities? What about the potential of development there?
Вы совершенно правы. Я уже практически 20 лет наблюдаю за темпами развития.
You are right. Over the past 20 years, the Chinese economy has maintained rapid growth. We know that China's GDP has doubled in the past 10 years, and the economic growth rate has remained relatively stable for the past decade. Today, China's GDP accounts for 19% of global GDP, and China's contribution to global economic growth has reached 30%, making it the largest contributor to global growth. At the two sessions held in early March this year, it was once again proposed that economic growth should be maintained at around 5% for this year, which means that China's GDP will increase by about 6 to 7 trillion yuan in 2024, and the total GDP will surpass the 130 trillion yuan mark. Of course, this growth can be described as a counter-trend growth achieved against the backdrop of Western media's widespread criticism of the Chinese economy. However, it is clear that such rhetoric is merely political manipulation and should not be taken seriously, because attempts to discredit the Chinese economy have already been made since the late 1980s, late 1990s, and during the global crisis of 2007 to 2008, but they all eventually failed. We should pay attention to the reactions of the business community. For example, a survey released by the Boao Forum for Asia Research Institute shows that 68% of global business representatives are optimistic about the further development of the Chinese economy, while only 30% of respondents are optimistic about the overall development of the global economy. So we don't need to pay attention to the Western media's claims of China's economic decline. Take France as an example. A French political commentator published a lengthy article in Le Figaro last year titled "China's the Great Retreat," heavily criticizing the Chinese economy. However, at the same time, French investment in China increased by 585% in just the first 2 months of this year. Therefore, we can only draw one conclusion. The actions of the Western media are a tactic to divert attention, to tell competitors that everything in China is very bad, to create noise in order to make foreign companies withdraw their investments. This is a competitive tactic. I also want to summarize what China's development has brought to the world. I think there are mainly 2 points. First, the market is growing. Consumption is growing. Indeed, consumption has not fully recovered after the COVID-19 pandemic, but the domestic market in China continues to develop, as are China's export markets. We see impressive growth in Shanghai's imports and exports. The second important area is, of course, investment. China's investment potential is enormous. On March 26, China launched a Global Enterprise Investment in China plan. On March 19, the State Council issued an action plan to promote high-level opening up and intensify efforts to attract and utilize foreign investment. These support measures include fully lifting restrictions on productive investment to promote development in certain sectors. For example, some tax incentives, duty-free policies, and so on. In January this year, Premier Li Cheng attended the 2024 World Economic Forum annual meeting and pointed out that investing in China will bring substantial returns and a better future. China offers abundant development opportunities and enormous potential for growth.
Speaking of this, mixed impression or understanding of the Chinese economy, of course, on one hand, it's partly because of the geopolitical tensions, particularly between Washington and Beijing. I wonder, how do European countries, including the French, see the Chinese economic potential opportunities there? And of course, China is raising this new concept of new quality productive forces. So what does that mean to, say, the world, to the European countries?
Alors je crois que c'est une question extrêmement intéressante, d'autant plus que clairement
I believe this is a very meaningful question because China evidently possesses the foundational capability for high-quality development. We've discussed some obstacles encountered before 2024, as well as the numerous difficulties faced by China and all world economies during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it's now apparent that China has many advantages in crisis management and maintaining incredibly stable growth. Here, I would like to discuss a few points. The first point I want to share with everyone is that China has abundant labor resources, especially high-quality labor. We are no longer in the 1980s or 1990s. Most Chinese students now have the opportunity to study abroad, gaining experience in world-class schools. This changes everything. That's the first point. Another point is that the Chinese government has made significant investments in research, innovation, and new technology development. We might discuss this issue later. So these foundational conditions are very useful for China's development. China has also implemented policies to encourage innovation and entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs in China are encouraged. People from all walks of life, including those from the middle class, can easily start their own businesses. Unlike some European countries, where starting a company or doing business on your own requires a lot of time and administrative procedures, in China, things get done quickly with very little hassle. This is an undeniable advantage, of course, all under the encouragement of the Chinese government. Certainly, all of these contribute to the development of the Chinese economy, bringing growth opportunities not only for China, but also for the entire world.
Well, Mr. Jim, as Yves said, China is simplifying the procedures and measures of living, investing, coming, visiting China, including the free visa treatment, for example, to about a dozen of countries recently. Of course, opening up further, including lifting all the restrictions in the investment in the manufacturing sector, improving, opening further in the other service sector, telecommunication, healthcare, etc. What's the signal here?
Actually, the message that China will further push its reform and opening up measures was already there 2 years ago. Now, the Chinese government has decided to fully open up to the world. For example, China has fully lifted restrictions on investing in its manufacturing sector. The service sector is also almost fully open to foreign capital. We are opening more sectors of the economy to foreign capital. China's opening up efforts were probably felt the most by European countries, because years ago, we had an investment agreement with European countries. For some reasons, the agreement was turned down at the European Parliament. But in fact, China had unilaterally implemented the agreement, which enables European companies to enjoy the benefits. For example, Boao will become a center for health technology in the future. It is a good time for health tech companies to enter China, because high-quality development has enabled people to spend more on quality products. This is a good opportunity. It also draws the attention of some investment fund companies. They no longer put their money in the Chinese stock market. However, they invest in companies that have leading technology but lack capital. With the capital from investment funds, they can grow up quickly, thus creating a slew of unicorn companies. Opportunities in the service sector are also abundant, and they are ready to receive investments.
Well, Konstantin, back to Boao Forum. Boao Forum for Asia, as it indicates, is about Asia, integration and also, of course, economic expansion. We know that, ASEAN countries, for example, has replaced I think, U.S. or European Union as the largest trading partner for China over the past couple of years. What do you see this integration process, between China and, Asian countries, including ASEAN, of course?
Интеграционные процессы идут, и, конечно, если мы говорим о...
The process of integration is underway. When it comes to Hainan, we must acknowledge that as an administrative unit of the People's Republic of China, Hainan is at the forefront of these integration efforts and is making tremendous efforts towards this. Today, Hainan province boasts the largest free trade zone in terms of area in China. By 2025, Hainan Island will fully initiate island-wide customs operations. The new mechanism will not only facilitate the free movement of goods, but also ensure the free movement of human capital. Hainan has long expanded its practice of visa-free tourism. Previously, citizens of 53 countries could enter Hainan for tourism without a visa. Now they can visit the island without a visa to participate in academic conferences and more. The scope of this policy is expected to expand in the future. Situated in the South China Sea, Hainan Island is surrounded by a dense network of international shipping routes. The Hainan provincial government vividly describes this situation, stating that if we imagine two economic contours, namely China's economic contour and Southeast Asia's economic contour, as forming a figure eight, then Hainan would be at the intersection of this figure eight. The process of integration is actively advancing. For example, we know that China and ASEAN launched the China-ASEAN Free Trade Area as early as 2010. Now the two sides are discussing the development of this free trade area into version 3.0. Although it is too early to define what constitutes version 3.0, everyone is eagerly anticipating it. I believe that in this sense, the process of integration will have a more profound and sustained development.
Думаю, что в этом смысле интеграционные процессы будут только наращиваться.
Well, from regional integration to global cooperation or even globalization, if despite this shelving of this comprehensive agreement on investment between China and the European Union, are we seeing continued investment interests of European countries, French business in the Chinese market?
Alors c'est le moins que l'on puisse dire, d'autant plus que
First and foremost, one would think of something particularly worth mentioning. This year marks the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between China and France. I believe this year is significant not only for France, but all of Europe, creating a genuine momentum. France and Germany, as major European powers, bring real momentum. Despite a myriad of difficulties experienced by all economies in the world during the COVID-19 pandemic, China remains one of the most important and dynamic economies in the world, and I think emphasizing this is crucial. Therefore, European countries benefit greatly from relying on the vitality of the Chinese economy to promote their own economic growth. Not only does the Chinese economy benefit, but so does the European economy, and indeed the global economy. Therefore, for France and European countries, we will see new export opportunities, new investment opportunities, and new opportunities for cooperation in various fields, as we mentioned before, in new technologies, innovation, infrastructure, and trade. This will keep China stable and prosperous. And only when China is stable and prosperous can the world economy be stable and prosperous. I think emphasizing this point is also very important. Not only are these industries developing steadily, but so are others such as culture, education, and science-related industries. I believe mutual understanding is crucial for global economic development. By celebrating the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries, we feel that China is making a significant contribution to the mutual understanding and cooperation between China and France.
Well, as Yves said, the Chinese economic recovery has been strong. In particular, in the past, in the first 2 months of the year, 2024, we see this export figures highly, more than expected for a lot of people. So, Mr. Ding, I have this question. Previously, in the past, people used to think the Chinese exported goods low end. They see cheap but poor quality. But now we are seeing these high-end products, very competitive. Of course, I would say the price is still very competitive. How do you see this kind of transformation or the change here?
China's development is gaining speed, propelled by industrialization. At the early stage of industrialization, we lack technologies, equipment, and trained workers. We could only produce low-cost, low-end products. As China sharpens its edge in manufacturing, it can now produce high-end products because we now have better technology, equipment, and more skilled workers. In the past, migrant workers from villages were the main workforce for China. The farmers left their hometowns for the cities. With the low cost of the workforce, they produced low-cost manufactured products. But now we have more university graduates. Every year, about 8 million to 10 million graduates enter the job market. They provide a better workforce for industrialization. And not to forget that over 65% to 70% of these students majored in engineering. They become professional workers and engineers, and this greatly boosts the upgrading of industrialization. As skilled workers, they design, improve, and operate advanced equipment, and the quality of these products is greatly improved. Not to mention large industrial equipment. The products China exports have changed from daily necessities to electronic devices, and later to mega industrial equipment. China is now the largest exporter of machines and equipment. We export to the US, Europe, and we also export to developing countries, like BRICS countries and emerging countries. Also, we see more potential for the exports to continue to grow. This cannot be without technological upgrade. More and more high-value products keep emerging, so we can ensure our exports to continue to grow.
Well, Konstantin, on this theme, upgrading this industrial production, one of the areas China has been very successful, I think a lot of people would agree with me, that is the renewable energy transformation from relying on fossil fuel to the export of EVs, for example, the solar panels and also batteries. What has China done right, or what are the factors contributing to this successful story here?
Вижу здесь две важные точки роста. Во-первых,
I believe there are two crucial points of growth here. Firstly, as Professor Ding mentioned, it is undoubtedly the strong support from the Chinese government for research, experimentation, and design work, including financial and educational support. As Professor Ding just mentioned, 60% of Chinese university graduates are STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math students. This also means that the country has a well-stocked talent pool. As for financial support, the average annual increase in government funding for scientific innovation is twice the growth rate of the GDP. China's GDP growth rate is expected to be around 5% in 2024, while the growth in investment in scientific research is 10%, twice the former. This means that China spares no expense in developing scientific innovation. However, this is not the most important aspect. As people say, you can invest heavily in innovation, but if you lack experts and experience, these investments are destined to be in vain. The experience of promoting the landing and dissemination of new technologies in China is crucial. Developing technology is one thing, but promoting technology is another. And this is precisely where China's strength lies. Indeed, from a technological perspective, China is still striving to catch up with developed countries in many fields. However, from the perspective of technology promotion and implementation, China is undoubtedly a leader. Take solar panels, for example. Although China is not the originator of this technology, it is far ahead in the installation, production, and export of solar photovoltaic panels. Therefore, China has an advantage in the implementation of new technology promotion. As for new technologies, if they are not implemented, the value of the technology itself is negligible. China has the advantage of promoting technology and the advantage of developing countries, which is crucial.
Back to you, Mr. Ding. I have to ask you, questions related or concerns related to this industrial upgrading, production line, supply chain issues like this, because of, I would say, the pressure from Washington or the policy of Washington, like nearshoring or friendshoring. We do see some changes of supply chain. For example, some of the companies or businesses, left China to regions, destinations like Vietnam, like India. Is there a concern about this migration of this industrial production? At the same time, you do see there's concern in the more technological developed countries like the US and European Union. They say the Chinese products are strong competitors, for example. On EVs, for example, they are basically building barriers to, in terms of importing the Chinese EVs here.
其实有两个问题，一个就是说
There are two problems. First is the transfer of factories. Factories in China move their production line to some other countries. They transfer to our neighboring countries like Vietnam, Cambodia, or even Bangladesh. This is quite normal because the comparative advantages no longer exist. The cost of land, labor force, and value of the product are more expensive. So it is normal to have production line transfer. At the same time, some new industries emerge. The United States and some European countries have started to raise technological threshold to some Chinese companies and raise tariff tax. With that, we can detect a trend in international trade that China's exports to Vietnam, Mexico, India, and Bangladesh are rising on a large scale. And then these countries' exports to the US and Europe are also increasing. This, in fact, is the deviation of trade. For example, many products are Chinese semi-finished products which are shipped to Vietnam and then exported to the US after being assembled there. It is the extension of supply chains, which is beneficial to China, because we're not only developing a market for our products, but we're also including Vietnam into our supply chain. And Vietnam will buy more Chinese products. In the past, US and Europe were our largest overseas markets because of the higher purchasing power there. But now more and more developing countries are growing with higher purchasing power. So they've become a major force in driving Chinese exports. In 2023, for the first time in history, China's exports to non-US, European, and Japanese markets exceeded that of the exports to US, Europe, and Japan combined.
我们的这个产业链布局也起作用。
Well, on that front, the technological cooperation with more developed countries like European Union, like France. If I want to have your thoughts on that, yes, there are differences, there are concerns, for example, about the Chinese EVs. Are there any solutions? Are there any ways for both sides, the Chinese side, the European Union, the French? Let's cooperate on that front, because after all, it's good for all of us to fight climate change by relying more on renewable products and energies.
Oui, c'est vraiment une excellente question parce que puisque la Chine vient.
This is a very good question. China has entered a stage of high-quality development. This will more effectively address global issues of concern to all countries, such as ecological issues. I think one thing is very important. As Professor Ding just mentioned, the quality of Chinese products is now very competitive. But interestingly, China has not sought to demonstrate this, but also welcomes foreign products, as long as they meet China's domestic demand. Let me give you a few examples. The population of China has undergone profound changes. The expectations of Chinese customers are also different from the past. Now, most of China's middle class has the possibility and opportunity to purchase innovative products, such as some high-tech products, especially luxury goods. Because I am French, I want to talk about French products. France has luxury goods, handbags, fashion products, and so on, which attract Chinese people. Therefore, they will not hesitate to choose these products. So here, we see mutual exchanges occurring. So for France, what Chinese products can attract the French? There are many products, especially traditional products. The first thing that comes to my mind is tea and some Chinese clothing brands. I won't mention their names. More Chinese clothing brands are beginning to penetrate the French market. So now it is not just German brands and American brands penetrating the French and European markets, but also Chinese brands. Therefore, although there is still some mutual distrust, efforts are being made. We have also witnessed cooperation in nuclear energy. France and China work closely together, actively improving relevant technologies. In terms of ecology, we see that France and China are also resonating well with each other. One more thing about China, which I think is very important. After the COVID-19 pandemic, China is more welcoming to foreign investment. Therefore, we see that China has truly opened its doors to foreign investors. China welcomes foreign companies to trade in China. In addition, Sino-French cooperation is also driving forward in other areas, especially in infrastructure, transportation, and energy. Therefore, I think all of these are very positive in promoting global cooperation.
Donc tout ça, ça reste très positif, je pense, pour la coopération globale.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for speaking with us. Thank you. With that, we come to the end for today's discussion. Many thanks again to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.
Thank you.